Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I have an extraordinary guest on the show today, and this young man. Before I say his name, I can tell you from what I know about him and his background and his athletic background, he is the definition of perseverance. You know, and young college football player, not that long ago, but long enough to say a while ago. I want to welcome a young man to the show, father, husband, professional, former college athlete, Kordell Young. Welcome to the show, Kordell.
Hey, Jeff, it's great to be on. It's great to be on.
I'm glad to have you. And I have a whole slew of questions to ask you, Kordell, which is going to keep us going for quite some time. But before I start asking all kinds of stuff, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am a 2011 graduate. I was obviously a student athlete at Rutgers University. I was a member of the football team, played running back, kick return. I'm a South Jersey guy, so I was back there in '06 when we beat Louisville, so one of the biggest games
Ever.
historically. And so was part of the winning culture, the beginning of the winning culture when Coach Shiano turned things around or began to turn things around at Rutgers University, and learned a lot in my time on the banks. And now I'm a business professional in the IT world, and I'm also a professional at making babies with my wife. I have an army. I'm married. I have 6 children, and really been attacking life, off the field.
Yep. And I had the pleasure, Cordell, of meeting you. I can't even remember the year it was, but you said you graduated 2011, so it had to be around there, right?
Yes.
And I was highly encouraging you to come work with us. And unfortunately for me, it didn't work out, but fortunately for you, you went on to have this beautiful career, successful career, and doing all kinds of great things. And I watch all the things you're doing. I see this stuff you post, and it looks like you're having a lot of fun. And like you said, building that army. You're a professional dad. And having a lot of fun. But I guess my first question I always ask all the guests on the show is college sports is difficult, right?
Yes.
Especially at the level you played. It doesn't get any bigger than the level you played at. What was the inspiring factor? What motivated you to say, I'm going to go play at that level, but also I'm going to play right here at home? What was the motivation behind that?
I would say the biggest motivation for me was the family atmosphere that was created by Coach Shiano. I was recruited. I was actually committed to go to the University of Virginia for 6 months. I wanted the recruiting process to be over early before my senior year. And when I had my official visit out there and just experienced what it was like, what it would be like to be a member of the Cavaliers, I expressed my concern to my coach, and he got back to me, and I reopened my recruiting. And Coach Shiano was one who stayed steady the entire time, and my recruiting coach was Coach Phil Galliano, and he always maintained that relationship with me to the degree where I felt like this was home. I never had to doubt his intentions and the intentions of the rest of the staff. Even with my running back coach, Coach Jackson, everybody came together to kind of give me peace of mind that this was the place that not only was I going to succeed on the field, but also off the field. And they did have my best interests at heart. Not that Virginia didn't, but
Right.
I got an overwhelming sense of, hey, this is the place where I need to be. And at the time, I mean, people said, oh, why are you going to little old Rutgers in comparison to the University of Virginia? You need to go to a big school. Those were the voices of my family members and whatnot.
Little did they know.
Yes, little did they know we'd go like 11-2 that year,
Yeah.
and do a lot better than Virginia. But the reason why I went there was mostly because of the family atmosphere that Coach Shiano had actually projected and lived up to.
And that's on his wristbands, right? All the wristbands that he
Yes,
gives out.
yes. Forget
And
about me. I love you.
yep, yep. And he still does that today. I think he gives those things out today to the guys.
Wow.
You know, so let me ask you this, and this is I just want to get your thought process because everybody who shows up day one, their thought and their vision and their expectations is different, right? So
Yes.
you're coming out of high school, highly recruited, athlete. You show up at Rutgers, you're there with all the other freshmen. What was your first day like showing up for camp? It's in this heat of August, and here you are at the highest level in college football. What was your impression when you showed up? Was like, hey, I expected this, or was, oh my God, this is crazy?
Oh, I was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally tossed out there. I mean, I remember my first meeting and the team meeting. I am sitting all the way in the back because my name is a Y, so we're seated alphabetically, and I'm at the top, all the way in the corner, and I'm like, where am I? Like, this is crazy. I missed home, and I'm already a New Jersey guy, so I
Yeah.
am home. Thank God I wasn't in Virginia because that's more than 4 hours away. I was only an hour up the turnpike. So that same feeling of being overwhelmed, though, it created to me, there was a necessity to adapt quickly,
Mhm.
where I had to cleave to what I was being instructed to do. So install for plays, what have you, where we had our itineraries were pretty much laid out for us. So I understood that, hey, I needed to be where I needed to be when I needed to be there
Yep.
and follow the instructions that I was given. So we had everything was mapped out for us. And so even the first practice, everything was overwhelming, I would say, at first. Even our first lift, every experience at the first time in college football, to me, was
Yep.
overwhelming. It was a shocker. There's nothing I could do to prepare for it, although I had great preparation at my high school through my high school coach, Coach Folsom, at West Everett High School. Nothing could compare or could prepare you for the challenges that you would face, especially the first times. But
Yeah.
being able to cleave to what I was being told to do helped out a lot
Yeah.
along the way.
And what was that transition like? Because there's other high school guys out there right now. They're in the heat of their season, right?
Yes.
And there's millions of them that have these dreams, these aspirations to become you. Go to a big school like that and play. What can you tell them about, hey, just be ready for this, whatever this is, in that transition from high school football to college football?
I would say be ready to do what's best for not only yourself, but what's best for the team. Because you come with expectations. You are the best of the best when you're coming out of high school. If you have the privilege and the honor of being recruited by a big school like Rutgers University, and you're going in there with the mentality likely that, man, I'm the best of the best, and I'm with great hopes of also being the starter at whatever position you were in or aspire to be in when you go there. But you have to keep an open mind, because the team and the goal of the team should be the main priority. And that's the advice that I would give, is have an open mind to kind of put, so that you're entrusting the coach to put the right pieces in play
Yeah.
so that everybody can succeed, because the coach wants to succeed. So you have to understand that the coach has your best interest at heart, because they're vested just like everyone else.
Yeah.
So I would definitely encourage every athlete to go where they believe that they're best suited, but also, consider the rest of the team and the vision, and buy into the vision that the coach has for that team.
That's great. Well, how long did it take? Because day one, everything's so fast, right? Everything's flying around. How long did it take for you to settle in and for the things to start to become, okay, I get it?
It probably took me at least halfway through my freshman year, through the season actually, to really begin for things to slow down, and for me to really grab a hold of the speed of the game, and mostly the structure, right? There's a lot of structure in college football, where a
Mhm.
lot of things are mapped out for you in your
Right.
calendar. And so you're battling with training, you're battling with going to school, and you're a full-time student. That doesn't change. You're in and out of class, but you're also waking up early to train, and you're also going back to practice later in between classes, and then after class you're going, or after training you're going back to class. So it took about halfway through the season for me to actually catch a rhythm, to where I felt like, man, I really got a hold of this. And
Yeah.
now I can get better in every area.
So I'm gonna hit you with this question. I know what you're gonna tell me, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because you kind of mentioned it before. You were at Rutgers um, when the world recognized who they were. When college football you were on the teams that put Rutgers football on the map, right?
Yes.
And prior to that, Rutgers football had a tough time. After you guys were gone, they were doing okay. Then they went back to a tough time. And now they're, coaches back and they're rebuilding it back to like, hey, they were on college game day today. I don't know if you saw that or not. And Nick Saban's like, hey, Rutgers, what can you say about Rutgers? And he goes, they're a problem. And like probably like, yeah, they're going to be a problem for everybody they play this year. I'm like, that's pretty cool, right?
Yes.
But for your years that you were there, what stands out? Like, what was your wow moment?
My wow moment, I would say, I mean, personally as a player was my first game. I mean, we went down to North Carolina to play UNC, and that to me was the just like I explained, like the first time, the first experience of everything was kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
When we were on the field, and I don't know how many fans North Carolina their stadium seats, but it felt like 500,000 people in the stadium.
Right.
You couldn't hear anything,
Right.
and the stadium was shaking. And so I was, wow, this is welcome to college
Yeah.
football.
Yeah.
And so that was the first wow moment that I had before ever actually even getting on the field. And I think that could probably become a distraction to some and
Yeah.
also hinder your play in many ways. But to me, I felt like, wow, this is welcome. Like this
Yeah.
is this is football right here.
Now, can you describe that feeling of being on the field in the game? It's so loud you can't hear. That's when you start talking to yourself, right? Like
Yes.
you're having that interpersonal conversation with yourself. What are you saying to yourself at that point in time?
Honestly, chop through chaos. I think that with Rutgers, I could speak to my experience individually, is that we were trained for all of that. And as I mentioned earlier, there's no amount of training that can kind of prepare you for what really happens, because training can go out of the window once
Yeah.
things don't match up to the script that you had.
Yeah.
But Coach Yano did a phenomenal job of training us for chaos. We were prepared for every moment, and even the sudden changes that could potentially happen. We were prepared. So in my mind, I'm thinking things that I was taught, like kind of to grab a hold on. Let's dumb this down to the simplest form. And to me, it was chop through the chaos, and
Mm.
also what is my 1/11th? And what I mean by that is in football, there's 11 players. So on the field, so what is my role and my responsibility on every given play? What can I do to make sure that this play is a success? So those are the kind of conversations that I had. I'd make it very
Yeah.
simple, because although you got a split second to make the decision, when you're out there on the field, it feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
Like before the play is like an eternity. During the play is an eternity. It really the game slowed down for me when I
Yeah.
was out there. And at the same time, you're dealing with a bunch of adrenaline.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I remember going out there against Louisville, and coach called a screenplay. We had prepared for this bubble screenplay. And I remember thinking, like, I better not drop this ball. And is Mike going to throw this ball so hard that it hits me in the face? Like everything we had practiced said, man, I got to make sure I stay behind the line of scrimmage. So
Yeah.
and then, man, when I catch that ball, I got to turn and I got to go. And then even in the midst of that, all I see is a blur. Like my
Yeah.
eyes are watering as I'm running, and I'm like, run, 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 run. Right. So those are some of the ways that I spoke to myself throughout the game. But it was resorting back to my training that could kind of sustain me or stabilize me.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Shiano's stuff, his coaching preparation, I hear it from everybody. Like you're
Yes.
you're an older guy and it's coming out of you like it's yesterday. Chop through the chaos. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like that's just instantly coming out of your mouth. You know what I mean? And that's going to be what you probably say that to your kids. You know?
Basically, yes.
Chop through the chaos. That is so cool, man. It's unbelievable. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit, if you don't mind, from being in
Yes.
school, out of school, back and forth. But what are some of the challenging things that you had to deal with, you know, transitioning out of sports? Football's over. We're going to get into some challenges you face while you're in it, because
Yeah.
that's some pretty deep stuff. But let's talk about when you had to transition out of it. You took that helmet off for the last time. What was that like?
That was difficult because as a football player, I mean, the ultimate goal for a football player, if you're really passionate about the sport, is to play in the NFL. And so, and not only play in the NFL, but have a successful NFL career. And so your identity, or at least I'll speak for myself, my identity was tied to the sport of football. So as much as I had goals and aspirations, even outside of football, it always involved who I was as a football player. So I wanted to be a state trooper, or at least that's what I would tell myself. If football doesn't work out, or when football is over, because there's an expiration date for everyone,
Yeah.
I will do X, Y, and Z. However, when that time came, I applied for 37 different jobs. And obviously, I interviewed with you as well because I didn't know who I was outside of football at that point in time. And it's not like I wasn't prepared for it in certain ways, through class and through the help that I had from the coaching staff. But it was a very difficult and challenging time because most of my identity was tied to playing the
Yeah.
sport of football. I didn't know how to I didn't know at the time how to make the transition of the skills and the attributes that I had gathered along the years throughout my football career, from being in Pop Warner all the way to college, and all the adversity I had experienced in the midst of that time. I didn't know how to translate that over to the real world.
Yeah.
I didn't know, like, hey, you're going to take every single, like in sales, I'm going to take every call like it's one more rep on the bench press, right? I didn't know how to transition properly. So it definitely took some time. It took me probably about 7 to 9 months to really figure out life after football.
Yeah. I've talked to a couple of guys who've been on the show, and you know, almost everyone says they go into like this funk.
Yes.
The game's over. Um, some guys have said, I don't even want to watch the game anymore. It hurts too much to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys say, well, it didn't really bother me until the following August when it was time to go back, and I wanted to go back and I can't anymore.
Yes.
So they all have these different moments in their lives where the end really hit them.
Yes.
And here's what I can tell you, and I'm sure now at your young age, I'm again, I don't want to say I'm old enough to be your father, but I'm old enough, right? That I still miss it, man.
Yeah.
It never goes away. And my brain, as soft as it's getting as I get older, right, still says, "Hey, you can go do that." you know, and my body is like, are you just totally insane or what? You have trouble getting out of bed these days, let alone, going to do that, you know? But
Yes.
it's nuts. So how did you prepare? What steps did you take for life after the game? You knew it was coming, it hit you. Okay, now what did you do to prepare yourself for that next stage of your life?
My last year, that's when it began to hit me. I said, what am I going to do after football? And for me personally, I obviously I endured many injuries during my career, 4 surgeries, but then also I had a daughter my sophomore year. And so I had to grow up really quickly. And being a father and being responsible in that way, what I learned throughout my time at Rutgers University, where we were prepared, right? We had to meet in the mornings at 7:30, and we had to have our books. I forget what we used to call it, but on our books, we had every hour blocked off, and we were accountable to every single hour throughout the day. What were we going to be doing within that time frame? And so knowing that, and then also as far as when it comes to, hey, when I should be waking up for camp, I had to program myself to go to sleep at a certain time because I knew that I had to wake up at a certain time. So I began to apply those things in preparation for when I'd be interviewing, right? So, or when I'd be meeting with people concerning possible opportunities for employment. And so I'd apply my life was always structured, even after football, and even in that window of 7 to 9 months before I really was able to grab a hold of a career and begin to work in IT. It was being accountable for every hour and knowing what it was going to take to be successful. That's something that no matter how far, let's say I could have strayed away from actually having a source of income, I was never without work, right? And so as a man, I embrace that man, I'm going to be working whether I have wages or not,
Yeah.
and being able to kind of number my days in that way really helped me out a lot. So that helped my transition. Is really being accountable for every hour.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, like you missed the sport, but those were the things that I had and grabbed from the sport that were
Yeah.
just a part of me now.
Right.
And I remember smelling the grass though. When it's football season, I know
Yeah.
because I can smell it, you know.
Yep.
Um, and so I kind of grabbed a hold of the fundamentals of how to conduct myself outside of football,
Yeah.
and on the field, and applied those in the
Yep.
transition, and it really helped.
It's so cool what you just said. Two things is one, you smell the grass. I was literally on a show the other day, and we were talking about what brings back memories, and one guy told me this. He said the smell of the locker room, right? And I and
Wow,
I
yeah.
and I said the smell of the grass. I'm like, because back when I was playing, there was no turf fields. Everybody had grass, So it was the smell of the grass, you know. But what you just said too, Cordell, is so true that you know your entire life of college football is mapped out, and
Yes,
the coaching staff, if they're good, and most of them are really good, and yours was really good,
yes,
is they teach you how to manage your life. They give you the skill sets to prepare for you to help you manage your life when the game is done. Just carry that
yes.
with you. And when I'm recruiting guys into our business, I don't know if you remember this forever years ago, but what I tell the athletes today, I'm like, look, man, if you just bring with you what you were taught in football and you bring the same passion, the same drive, the same pursuit of excellence into this business, you're going to be great.
Yes, yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And if you don't bring that, things might be a little difficult, you know, but yeah, that is so cool. You're spot on, man. So you mentioned the injuries. Let's talk about that. I know when you and I met years ago, you told me about it. I'm like, how the heck did this young man keep pushing through that stuff? Because they weren't just like a couple of snags here or there. There were some major heavy duty injuries.
Yes.
Yeah, talk about that for a minute.
So that was it. I honestly, like, dealing with adversity to me was, at that point in time, with my first injury, right? I tore my ACL and my LCL. I remember Coach Shiano, before I had gotten injured. I remember him saying to leave it all on the field. I didn't know that leaving it all on the field would literally mean that
Yeah,
I'd be
leave it.
getting hurt that next game.
Oh my God.
um, but I had that, like, we had a philosophy for success, and you had to look yourself in the mirror at the end of every day and ask yourself if you did everything that you could to be the best that you could be. And
Mm,
you had to be honest and really really assess yourself and take inventory and say, hey, I have to be honest. Did I do what I was supposed to do when I was supposed to do it? Did I follow the instructions that I was given? Did I complete my assignment? And that's what drove me, right? So when life circumstances ended up resulting in things that I felt or others might feel that were unfavorable, I just said, hey, this is the hand that I've been dealt. How am I going to be faithful with what I've been given? Right. So right now I get a knee surgery. So right now my responsibility is to heal up, listen to our physicians. Hey, what are they telling us to do? Dave McCune, what's the next step? What's the surgeon? What is the next step? How can I recover? But now I was focused on how am I going to learn as much as I can about the game? This is my beginning of my sophomore year, and I'm second string behind Ray Rice, who was up for the Heisman.
Tough guy.
And
That's a good guy to be behind.
yeah, so I'm like, all right, so how can I soak in the game?
Yeah.
And also one of my weaknesses was upper body strength. So now I have an opportunity to, hey, you know what? My legs, I squatted 575 pounds coming out of high school. So I know that's not an issue now, but I only benched 275. Okay, well, how can I get stronger upper body? Now I have an opportunity to focus and be isolated strictly on that part of my body because I'm recovering from knee surgery. So that was my mentality initially, but I'm going to tell you, like, those things take a toll on you when you're experiencing major injury after major injury. And each one of them came with their own set of challenges and adversity. And it got more difficult as time went, right? I would say that, and I had a crucial conversation with Coach Shiano toward the tail end of my career. And it was my going into my last year, my redshirt senior year. And it was because of now what was once easy for me became extremely difficult. Right. I'm passionate about the sport. I love the sport, but this is the fourth time that I have a major knee surgery, right? And by this time, everything that happened to my left knee was happening to my right all in one shot. Right. And so dealing with that adversity while also dealing with life, because life never stopped happening off the field. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a child. So all these things, nothing's really isolated. My whole person was impacted at that time, and I didn't know how to rightly deal with some of the adversities I was facing. And so toward the end of my career, I really believe that I began to, if I could be completely honest, right, in hindsight, I could say, man, I grew kind of bitter towards the game because of the injuries and me giving my all. And then the end result was, man, it was just all taken away from me. Yeah. But I never quit at the same time, right? And so I learned that from Coach Shiano because he really asked me some crucial questions going into my last year. And I know, like, the coaching staff was behind me, like, hey, if anybody could get through this, why not you? Yeah. And I could answer that and say, man, you know what? I can get through this. So I had encouragement along the way. But those injuries, they're traumatic, and you need everybody to play their part, and so that you don't go into a deep and hidden place. We had a whole injured group where, it's like the leg guys, a bunch of guys that also tore their legs up and had all different types of surgeries. And we really kept one another and encouraged one another. But also, I would say that you're not the same player. And some people can bounce back and they can be even better. I wish that was the case for me, but those things took a toll on me. Yeah. Every time I got better and I felt like I was 100%, I got hurt again. And so dealing with the, like, that was mentally, it was draining because you're watching everybody else play. And honestly, you learn a lot though at the same time. Yeah. So I had players who were younger than me, and I was looked at as now the senior guy growing, my redshirt junior year, my redshirt senior year. And there's guys who are, they are athletes. I'm watching people like Joe Martinek. I'm watching people like Jordan Brooks, Kenneth Gordon, Mason Robinson. Yeah. I'm seeing these guys, DeAntoine Williams, and I have to train these guys how to be the best that they can be at my position, where I've inherited the starting role, but by default of injury. Now what's best for the team is that I teach them everything I know, how to take my position. So that's a challenge that you face too. Yeah. And I could be really selfish. I could withhold myself and say, hey, you know what? If I teach them how to block on this play, they'll take my position. If I teach them how to hit the right hole on this play and what to look for and what not to do, then that will give them a step ahead of me. If I have that type of mindset, I can hinder the team and our ultimate success. So there's a lot of things that a person will face in those situations, and it really challenges your character. Oh my God. Really challenging.
So can we talk about that a second? Like, everybody that, is out there, the fan, let's say, just the traditional fan, right, who
Yeah.
sits in the bleachers and watches the game. They watch you run up and down the field. They see you get hurt, right? But they
Yes.
don't see what happens after that. They just see, okay, where's Kordell? Oh, he's on the sidelines, he's hurt, or he may have had to can be taken off the field. But they don't see the aftermath, right?
Yes.
They don't see the work, they don't see the time, they don't see the pain, they don't see what it takes to come back and to get out there at that level again. But take the physicality of it and put it on the side for a second, and let's talk about the mental side of,
Yes.
I know what it's like to be on crutches, hobbling around campus, especially Rutgers. The campus is so big. You got to get on the buses. You got to get people to drive around. And it's all over the place. Then it's the winter. And you're at home in your dorm or your apartment. You're by yourself. Your mind starts spinning. You're in pain. You wonder, like you said, are these guys going to take my job? Am I going to get my job back? Am I ever going to play again? There's so many things going on in your head. How did you keep sane? How did you handle that? What advice can you give to the young man or woman out there right now who just went through the major knee surgery and is sitting there thinking the same thing you thought years ago?
One of my friends, and I'll quote him right now, but I'm not going to. Yeah, I guess Jason Bromley. He used to play for the Giants, so he says, "Control the uncontrollables," and that's basically what you have to do, or control the controllables. Sorry, not control the uncontrollables. Control the controllables. So what is your responsibility in this present time? You have to be exactly where you are. And I'll share a quick story. Hopefully it's quick. But I remember like kind of the what you just painted, the picture you painted, like going through the crutches and it being
Yeah.
winter and the pain and all those things. I remember like it was yesterday. Ray Rice, Courtney Green, and Glenn Lee, we're all getting out of the car going to class. And it was like I had my crutches. It was typical for when you first come out of surgery, you're going to spend some time. You get an excuse to be kind of laid up in your bed for a little while and recover and then get back
Right.
to class. But I didn't see why I should do that. If I could literally be present and learn what I need to learn, then I've got to be there. I felt a sense of duty and obligation. However, when doing that, I didn't understand what it would like. It was challenging because it took me, I'm not exaggerating, about 45 minutes to an hour to walk from the car to my class
Yeah.
when I had my first experience on those crutches because
Yeah.
you have to learn how to properly use the crutches.
Yeah.
And and you're dealing with the pain as well. And maybe I
Yeah.
should have been laid up in the bed, but I needed to get to class because I could. And I remember thinking, man, I could quit. I could give up right now.
Yeah.
This is very, very difficult. And I could just go home and I could just hang it up and be done.
Yeah.
Or I could become the best crutcher known to man that has ever crutched.
You get a
Right.
good
And
tricep
so
workout in too.
And what happened to me is I got so good on crutches that I was in class before everybody else. I was faster on the crutches than I was just walking, and everyone else
Yeah.
was just walking. And I'd fly on those crutches. It became a challenge for me. It became an obstacle for me to overcome.
Right.
And that's because that's what I embraced as my
Yeah.
present.
Yeah.
Like that's what I embraced as what I could control.
Yeah.
And so people would want to hold the doors for me, but I'd have my crutch holding the doors for others, right? So I had to embrace that. And that the attitude mattered because I could
Mm.
control my attitude. I could control, like so I've heard it said that frustration is a choice. And so I could control whether or not I would be frustrated. And I just chose not to be frustrated and to control the controllables and to be the best that I could be in that given moment with what life had basically dealt me.
Control the controllables. And but it happened to you not once, not twice, not three times, but four times.
Yes.
The typical above average athlete, forget about the average, the way above average athlete would say, I'm done with this. How the heck did you just keep plugging forward after four times, let alone once?
I was crazy. No, I'm just kidding.
You got to be a little crazy to do it,
Yeah,
right?
You have to be, or I think that I was so focused on getting the job done and doing the best that I could do. And because you can't control the injuries, they are freak accidents.
Right.
And watching the film, I mean, I could look back and I'm like, man, if this person would have blocked that person, or if I would have made this cut in that way, and you can't get stuck in that either.
Yeah.
But I think what kept me going was, I mean, I had my daughter after my first injury.
Right.
And so now I was living for more than just myself.
Sure.
I had to succeed. And I knew statistically that in my family, there were people who were destined for success, but for whatever reason, when life got when there was adversity in life, things just they crumbled in certain ways. But I now had more resources available to me than they may have had at the time.
Right. Right.
So I wasn't an expert at taking advantage of the resources that I had, but I did embrace the resources that I had to get me back to a place where I could compete and where I could be, embrace the education that I was also receiving,
Yeah.
so that I would be well positioned to succeed after football.
Yeah.
But I would say that, I mean, it was like a no quit attitude that I had to have. I did not want to quit. I wanted to overcome the obstacles that faced me. That's how I saw life. I didn't say, "Oh man, you know what? I came in here. I was destined to be the starter and I was going to go to the NFL. I wanted to be drafted first overall." That's out of the window. I didn't consider all those things as something that were holding me back. I always said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to do what I can do with what I've been given, and I'll let the results take care of themselves."
Right.
And it became more difficult as time went on, right? But
Sure.
at the same time, my attitude had to stay focused on what I could control.
That's awesome. Okay. So injuries. It happened. It happened. It happened.
Yes.
But then your identity shifted and you became a dad.
Yes.
Talk about that, how you handled that. You were a young man at the time. I mean, you're still a young man, but you were even younger back then. And you're in the midst of football, college, injuries. Boom, you're a dad. Talk
That
about that.
was that was it was challenging. I mean, I didn't have the right mindset. Like, I didn't view myself as a man. Meaning, like, I know I was a young man, but as a father, like
You're a man.
you are a man. You
Yeah.
have to really man up, right? That's the
Yep.
saying amongst
Yep.
amongst the sport, is man up, right? So I had to really man up to and embrace my responsibility. And growing up, I saw, like, I would say that my mindset is that if I my parents did their best, they did the best that they could to raise me up. I was raised up by my grandmother primarily, and they all did their best in contributing to my success and my upbringing. But also, if I could look on any areas where I felt like maybe I missed out, those were the areas that I wanted to not miss out on with my daughter, right? So I remember in the beginning and I saw as an opportunity. My injury was, to me, a blessing in disguise, because my daughter was born 2 weeks after I got hurt.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I got the opportunity to really spend time. I was with her 6 days out of, like, I got to see her at least 6 days out of a week
Great.
and be with her, whether it was on campus or whether it was back at home, and really be able to be there for her in ways that I felt were pivotal and would obviously impact the trajectory of her life in a
Yeah.
dynamic way. And so, being a father, I had to embrace. Now I was no longer living for me. I was no longer living to be the best, uh, uh, number one at this or number one at that. It was now about her. It was now
Yeah.
about life was now about more than myself. And so that that instilled in me the desire to live for something more than myself, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think that there's nothing like that. I mean, people experience that like when they're older, but I got to
Yeah.
experience that at a young age. So it was almost like I never missed a beat. Although I was injured, I now got to embrace fatherhood, and I think that was a blessing, but it was also challenging because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, there's no playbook for being a father,
Yes.
right? There's just like, okay, because every kid's different. Every experience is different. But in football, here's your playbook. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's what everything. But you're like, okay, here's my daughter. Where's the book?
Yes. I remember my daughter's grandmother. I'm looking to her. I'm like, hey, so what should we do about X, Y, and Z? And she's like, she's your daughter. You tell
Yeah,
me.
figure it out. Oh my! And she's how old now? 16?
She's 16 years old. Yes. She's
That's fun.
actually turning 17 tomorrow.
Oh, really? Happy
Yes.
birthday. Happy birthday. 17.
Yes.
So is she going for a driver's license tomorrow?
Yes,
Oh,
she is.
tomorrow's Sunday.
Monday.
Monday.
Yes, Monday.
Oh my God. How's she doing driving?
She's been doing well. She did well on her driver's test and as far as preparation to get her
Yep.
permit and my wife has a Tesla and so I'm like, hey, you want to try on the Tesla? It can drive for you if you want to. It's going to cost us, but we can instill that feature. So she's growing in confidence.
Yep.
It's terrifying for me because
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, hey, what kind of car would you like? I know I want a tank for you,
Yeah.
so that you're protected on every
Right.
side.
Right. Well, here, let me give you a little food for thought. My three kids are 28, 26, and 24. And the most terrifying day of my life happened three times in a row. Is when you get them a car and they say, okay, Dad, I'm leaving now for the first time they get in the car
Wow.
and drive away on their own. And it's just like, oh my God, are they coming back? Like, what's happening? Now, my kids probably don't want to me to tell this, but my oldest daughter got into a really crazy car accident once.
Yeah.
They all survived, thank God. Everything was fine, no nothing. And my son got in two pretty decent car accidents too. Everything's fine, but all three cars completely totaled and wrecked, and so it's just like, oh my
Wow.
God. But it's just that they drive off on their own. It's like, oh, they coming back or what? It's like, ooh. So you had a lot to handle as a young man, and and I'm going to say this, the above average guy couldn't handle what you went through. There's just no way.
Yes.
And you talk about the support that you mentioned the grandmother, but talk about, did you have any support? Who was there for you? Who were your go-to people? Was it family, coaches, friends, all the above, teammates?
I think it was all the above. My family, I felt like my family they would be upset when they found out that I had a daughter. Um, and it was something that I feel like I let them down, or I felt like I let them down at that point. But it was the opposite. My father was excited. My daughter's grandfather, he was excited. Everybody was excited for us, and they really embraced and helped as much as they possibly could. Coach Shiano helped as much as he possibly could, right? So the coaching staff and the players, everybody, like I remember Dimitri Lenton, he was somebody who I looked up to, and he was basically my mentor in my time at Rutgers University. And I really learned a lot from him, and he was always there for me, helping me, right?
Yeah,
So I had a good support system around me throughout the entirety of the adversity that I was facing. So I was never alone to where I was suffering in some way that nobody could understand. So that really helped a lot to not isolate myself because as I mentioned earlier, I had those thoughts. I could just
yeah,
quit.
yeah,
I could just hide because I was Mr. Superstar. At least that's my mind. My
yeah,
head was big, right?
yeah,
And I'm like, man, I'm projected to do this and to do that, and I could hide and say, man, you know what? How's everybody going to see me now
yeah,
that now I'm weak?
yeah,
I'm not I'm not the fastest. I'm not the strongest. I'm not any of those things anymore. I'm absolutely weak. And to have people still look at me and say, man, you're of value,
yeah,
and be able to point to that value and how I can continue. I had that on every side. And that was from my father, that was from my grandmother, that was from players on the team, that was from the coaching staff. So, and that was from obviously my daughter's family as well. where they embraced me in a way where I felt like I was valued.
That's awesome. You know, I'm just going to ask you a simple question. Why didn't you quit? Why didn't you say, I'm not dealing with this. I'm out of here?
That's uh that's a good question. Um, what it came down to was really honestly finishing what I started.
Okay.
Um, my last year, right? I had what I would call an awakening, right? Like I was ready. This will be the first time I ever shared this like publicly in this way, but I was actually contemplating suicide my last year. There was heavy depression that was there, regardless of the support that I had. And I remember I went to a church and a person handed me a pamphlet in the beginning, and then I heard a voice, and the voice said, "Don't open this now. You're going to need this later." That's the voice I heard as I was about to open up the pamphlet. And so I did what I heard. I didn't open it. But then, and that was in 2000, or yeah, that was in 2009. And then a year later, so my last football season, I had lost almost everything. It was by this time I had my fourth knee surgery. We lost our house back at home. So I was technically homeless outside of my scholarship, at least in my mind, right? I didn't know that I would have
Yeah.
support. So from where I stood, I didn't have anything to live for. And my football career to my in my estimation was over. And the relationship that I had with my daughter's mother had fallen out. So now
Mm.
even being able to see my daughter became difficult. So to me, I had no purpose to live. And I would say that when I wanted to throw in the towel, all of a sudden I was cleaning out my apartment and I came across the pamphlet.
No way.
And I had goosebumps all over because I remembered the voice that said, "Don't open this now. You're going to need this later." And so I remember I opened it up. I was goosebumps all over. I opened up the pamphlet and it said in big bold letters, "Listen, listen, listen." And then it said, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven. I will forgive them of their sin and I will heal their land." Now, I had a land that was desolate. So at that point in time, I knew that that was God talking to me. And I didn't have any person to intervene where you could say, "Oh, this is religion." No, this was a personal relationship where God was communicating with me that nobody else could refute. And even I couldn't understand that this voice spoke to me a year prior that I would need this. And then I find the pamphlet that I had forgotten about at that particular time when I wanted to end it all. So I remember having that exchange happen.
Yeah.
And I did what I read. He said if his people would humble themselves and pray and seek his face and turn from their wickedness, that he would hear them and he would forgive them and heal their land. So I went outside and I cried out to God and I told him about my thoughts of suicide. And I remember hearing his voice again. And he said, "The only way that your daughter is going to know me is through you." And so what I understood in that moment, in that encounter, was that now 100% of my life belonged to God and I was living for a standard that was greater than who I am, that would also benefit her in the future, that she would also know this God that I did not yet know, but what I did know about him was that he had my best interests at heart,
Yeah.
and that when I wanted to quit, he was still faithful. So that began that I think that was the turning point in my life that actually
Wow.
is the reason why I'm still here.
Mhm.
Otherwise, there was probably going to be a funeral, right? So I got to the point of depression because everything took such a toll on me and came to that point, that crossroad where it was over, apart from that voice that spoke to me actually reaffirming what I heard by me finding that pamphlet and coming across that pamphlet and then hearing his voice again. Um, and that's like, oh, some people would say, "Oh man, that sounds crazy. Are you crazy?" But I'm like, well, if crazy saves my life, then
That's
I'll
okay.
I'll take it. I'll
Yeah.
take it. But that began my faith journey.
Yeah.
honestly. And so that's what changed my life drastically, drastically.
Do you still have that pamphlet?
Yes, I do. I do. It's actually right over there in my
Yeah.
office. I still have it.
That's a
Now I cut out the page that said this, that gave me the scripture, and I put that in one of my Bibles, and I lost that Bible, so I have no idea where that is, but
oh,
I do have the pamphlet.
and that Bible's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, maybe somebody else has that same experience, and they need it.
Yeah, or maybe they're hearing this and they can give it back to you.
Yes, yeah, give it back to me, please. I'd love that.
Uh, So, man, hey, listen, man, I really appreciate that you sharing that story. That takes a lot of courage to do that. Not many people have that strength and fortitude, to do that.
Yes,
And that's a whole idea, Cordell, behind these stories, these shows that I'm doing, is for these kind of moments uh, to touch other people's lives.
yes,
So because there's somebody out there, there's another athlete out there. It doesn't have to be an athlete, can anybody. But this primarily thing is around athletes. Is they're living your life,
yes.
and they don't know where to go or what to do. And
Mm,
this little moment in time that we're going to share with them, hopefully as many people out there can hear this. This could make a difference.
yes.
This could save somebody else who might not have found that pamphlet, who might
Mm,
not have someone's there helping, who may not have a good coach or family member, teammate to support them, and there is a funeral. So this
mm.
little conversation here might prevent a lot of funerals,
Yes, I hope
which
so.
which is really that's what this is all about, you know. Whew, that was big. That was big. Um, so lessons, what are the values that you took from football, athletic world, that you follow today? I know we said structure and process a lot, but how about values that you carry with you, that helped you in your professional world today?
Um, I would say integrity. Integrity is big.
Mm.
Um, who are you when nobody is watching?
Oh,
That's huge. I mean, we say it all the time, or we hear it all the time, especially in sports. Who are you when no one's watching, right? And something that Coach Shiano used to do or used to instill in us was, if you see a piece of trash on the ground,
pick it up.
who do you expect to pick that up? When we're in the dining hall and we like you may see other people that leave their trays, they leave a mess, but who do you expect to clean that up? It's going to be one of the older ladies who work there. Oh, you want them to clean that up
It's
for you?
somebody's mother, somebody's
Yes.
sister, somebody's daughter. Yeah,
And so that those values, man, those I he Coach Shiano was teaching us how to be men
yeah,
in this world. And he did instill his faith, and he did pass along what he felt was necessary for us to be men, and he exposed us to his family, so we got to see the dynamic, the coaching staff. He exposed us to their families as well, and so I got to learn, because what I've learned across over the years is that marriage is a learned behavior. It doesn't come with the manual like that. You
yeah,
have
no
to
playbook.
learn how to function in a marriage. And so I got to learn, even as a young man, and grow to be be more mature through what I watched with Coach Shiano and with his wife, and so on and so forth. We had enough access to their lives to
Yeah,
be able to grab a hold of those values and be faithful, understand what it looks like to be committed to the work that you've been given, and then also have somebody come alongside you as a wife and help you, and
yeah,
help your children, and how they can nourish both you and your children, and encourage, and so on and so forth. But I would say that the integrity and fidelity that I learned from specifically Coach Shiano, and then obviously trickling down with his vision has been for the players and for his staff and everyone else included. My approach to life has been to, man, be honest, and be honest with where I am in relation to others, and understanding that I do have blind spots. He taught us one thing as far as like how like he learned as a coach, which was that everybody's different. So even when it comes to players, he came to the realization that he can't coach everyone the same. So while I may be able to hear something a certain way, others may not be able to, as far as the messaging and being able to receive. So dealing with people as individuals was something that I grabbed a hold as well to apply to life. But I would say that the anchor has been to being a man of integrity, and doing what's right when others may the wrong thing may be popular, or and especially when nobody else is watching. And that comes from that peace of mind you get at the end of the day, knowing you did everything you
Yeah.
can to be the best you could be.
Yeah. And when you look in that mirror, Kordell, there's no hiding.
Yes.
There's you can't lie to yourself,
Yes.
because you're the only one who knows the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You can lie to everybody else, and nobody else knows what's going on behind your eyes, but you do.
Yes.
That is so true. So football's over, right? You're in your professional life for a while now. Got
Yes.
an awesome family going on. What do you think is your most proudest moment post athletics over the last number of years?
Proudest moment.
Moment, achievement?
Marrying my wife. I think that marrying her really changed my life for the best. So apart from you know, I would say my relationship with God, that is the greatest encounter or experience that I've had in my life that has been most impactful. So I've been able to be successful in the marketplace and grow this family, right? I'm growing this army. I'm done at 6.
Are you sure?
God willing, I'm done at 6. So we've grown this family, but I think large in part because she's been like an anchor. And I know we talked about and we joked about kind of like the stay-at-home mom and the homemaker,
It's a
but
tough job.
she's the COO.
Yeah.
And so she runs this place and she lets me be me. She lets me go into the marketplace and she embraces what I'm doing as what we're doing. And so she's my teammate, right? And we work as a unit in everything that we do. And
Yeah.
it's not that there's not disagreements, but even in the midst of disagreement, there is submission. When I'm wrong, I have to ultimately fess up and say, okay, look, we can go another direction.
Yeah.
You were right about this. So I think that she's been the greatest, or marrying her has been the greatest accomplishment or achievement that I've had since graduating. And that has played a role. I think, like the Bible says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor with God. And so I believe that has played out in my life and has attributed to the success that I've had after football in every
Yeah.
area, especially even relationally with other people. I think she's way more likable than I am. She everything I'm not, she is. And so I think
Well,
that's
you're a pretty likable guy.
but she is way more likable.
She's super likable.
Yes.
So how often do you tell her that?
uh I mean, I would say, if this were the marketplace, I would file harassment against myself because of how
Okay.
much I'm all over her and like,
Okay.
you are so great, like
That's good.
she'd be filing harassment against me.
All right. Well, just keep pushing. Maybe one day, she'll say, "Hey, I'm going to file harassment against you, just to you," you know, which
I
is
said, yeah,
good.
so I'm the CEO, so you're gonna have to talk to me, you're gonna bring this up
Yeah.
to me.
Where's HR?
I know, right? Well, I'm HR too, so
All right. So what are some of the challenges you face now professionally? That you can go backwards in time and pull some of the athletic mindset out and use it in the challenges you face in your career today.
I would say what I mentioned about 111. So everybody doing their part. I think what translates over, one thing I learned from a football team is that you got over 150 guys. Not and even in, like you consider the staff and everyone else and everybody that it takes to achieve, like we talk about 1-win seasons, like every game is its own season.
Yep.
So if like now I take that mentality and I understand that we have a bunch of people in corporate America, we have a bunch of people who are good at what they do, but everybody is unique. So how can you get all these different people who are unique in what they bring to the team? You might have 5 salespeople who have the same title, but they are not equal, but they are all unique in a way that they can contribute to the team, and you can utilize their strengths and sharpen their weaknesses. So being aware of those things, I think helps me in my approach. But I think that my experience also, it gives me an advantage in that I'm able to identify, um, I'm able to be honest about my weaknesses and also be able to identify where others are strong and others are weak and how I could possibly leverage that. And I'm not always aware of my weaknesses, right? But I look with the mentality that I've acquired from football, and I'm looking at it as a team. Okay, so what can we do to get better? What can we do to get a better result at the
Yeah.
end of the day? We all have this vision from our leader, whether it be a coach or whether it be a CEO. We all have this vision. How can we embrace it and utilize our strengths so that we can get the desired goal? And I would say that 1/11th, that mentality of there being 11 players on the football field, everybody has to do their part. Every play you may practice a play and you know that the guard is supposed to pull and they're supposed to take out the D end, but the way that the defense, they moved that as a result of your motion and your movement, it looked different than how you practiced it. Okay,
Yeah.
well, what are you going to do about what you're going to do? Because control the controllable. So
Yeah.
learning that, I've applied that to corporate America. And the challenge is that you're dealing with people and everybody is different
Different.
and especially how everyone handles crucial conversations.
Yeah.
Not everybody is in the same place. And so my job, honestly, like I'm a brand ambassador, and I'm a liaison between 2 different companies. And so my role and my responsibility is to get 2 people who are high performers within both companies to agree and to come to a point where they see the benefit in working and partnering with one another
Yeah.
for that common goal or that common interest. And so football has helped me take on that mentality of like, hey, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's
Yeah.
look at the film and see how we could have done this better.
Rewind it. Rewind.
Yes, it's going back to, like, the film doesn't lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and in the sales world, our calls are monitored in certain ways, right?
Yeah.
Like you might have live recording and you can go back and you can see. And so being honest in those ways, like, kind of helps us get better. But I'm seeing that that's no different than football. It's awesome.
Yeah. And Cordell, what you just said, you said it a couple of times in this category here about be honest with your weakness.
Yeah,
You know how hard that is?
it is.
Man, I don't care who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to feel weak. Nobody wants to admit they're weak. And that's one of the hardest things to be honest with, especially with somebody else, let alone yourself.
Yes.
So how do you, as a leader in your company, when you see somebody, hey, look, man, that guy, that girl, she's just not being honest with herself. How
Mm-hmm.
do you approach that? How do you handle that?
It is difficult. I'll say that first, because when you the I think the difficulty is that when you're honest, you admit a particular or a spot where you failed, or maybe a failure or a shortcoming. And the danger in doing that is that you may feel that somebody may use that against you.
Hmm.
And so, the way that I believe that I overcome that with others is, if I do see a weakness, I personally don't want to highlight that. as a point of like, I don't want to weaponize that,
Right.
is probably the best way to say that. And I want to remind them of basically the vision or the goal that we're looking to accomplish. I reinforce, like, so my behavior may come off to someone as not in alignment with their interests, but I'm a team player. Like, that's like, if the team doesn't win, I don't win. That's how I feel.
Right.
And so reminding people of why we're doing what we're doing, because everybody has a goal. And so I like to discuss those goals, revisit those goals, and then use those as the main point of emphasis so that we can overcome all different types of differences that and challenges and disagreements. And I would call the disagreements to being the weakness, and it's lack of perspective or consideration of what somebody else might be thinking. And so we just don't consider one another enough. I think in most
Mm.
times that's what I see and encounter, is that it's we don't have the same mindset. So how can we get to this place where we all think the same and do the same? And that's challenging. And so I would say to make it to make sure that it does, I don't weaponize someone's weakness and attack them. I always bring it back to the main purpose, right? Why are we meeting? Why are we having these
Yeah.
conversations? So I think that focusing on that, making the main thing, it provides some clarity.
Yeah. Hey, what you just said, man, it's again, as I'm looking down, I'm writing and writing and writing all this stuff you're saying, right? And you said we don't consider each other enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
is so powerful, Cordell, that in the corporate world, hey, in the athletic world, man, especially the NFL, it's me. It's all about me, right? In the
Yes.
NFL, because without we can go on another direction there. In Big Ten college football, it's supposed to be about the team. But in the way in today's world, NIL, all this crazy stuff going on, they're shying away from the team, and it's all about the individual, which is crazy, you know. But when you just said, "Hey, we don't consider each other enough," that is so powerful, especially for those that want more, don't know how to get it, need help, need direction, need coaching. They might be struggling. And for you to sit there and talk to them and say, hey, why are we here? Where are we going? What's the goal? Let's talk about you and how we can help you get there. You know how many leaders don't do that?
Mm,
And that's why you see people who are unhappy. They're changing teams. They're changing companies. It's because they don't feel valued. You said that before, is they
yeah.
just don't feel the value of being where their feet are.
Yes.
You know, that is, whew, man, you got some pretty cool things going on. All right, so let me ask you this crazy question. Let's talk about athletically and professionally after sports, anything you would change? Go if you're looking back, hey man, if I could go back in time, I'd do this different. Anything pop up?
Um, if I could do it all over again, I don't know when, but oh, actually, I probably could pinpoint when. So there was a time where I came back too early from injury, and that was when I went a little too hard when I had tore my meniscus in 2008, and so that 2008 season when I came back, um, the following year, I feel like that was in the summer. I missed out on time in that upcoming year in that season because of being out on that meniscus tear too early. And if I could go back, maybe I sit out a year. Maybe I actually sit down and heal up and do whatever it takes to recover while not taking on the pounding that comes from a football season, right? So you're getting hit, you're getting pulled all different types of directions as a
Yeah.
running back. So I was taking a lot of trauma on a knee that needed more recovery. So I would say that I would slow things down because I wanted to help the team as quickly as possible. And I felt like I would give us the best chance at success if I was on the field. But in reality, I mean, me at not being 100%, I think that actually could do more harm for the team, and I think that maybe that's something that I would change.
You know how hard that is for a college athlete to say, "I'm going to sit out."
It is. It is so
It's
hard.
not part. It's you're not built that way.
Nope.
You're just not. Now, like you're a mature man now, right? And you can look
Hmm.
back and say, hey, you know what? What would 1 year do differently? Probably a lot.
Yes.
But at the time, you're like, I got to get out there.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Man, that is some awesome advice because now with the red shirts and the COVID years and all, I mean, you got guys playing 7, 8 years.
Yes.
You know, they can get like 5 degrees in all this time, but it's almost like an NFL career they're out there.
Hmm.
That's great advice. How about professionally? Out of school now, out of no more football, you're working your corporate world. Anything you change there?
Um, I don't think I would. I don't think I would change anything corporately or professionally. I think that the path that I landed on has created the life for me that helps me to be the man that I am in all areas of life. Especially as in my where I worked at CDW, great leadership
Yeah.
and really cared about the entirety of the person, not just myself, but the entire team, right? That he was managing, Bill Brownell, right? And even now where I am, like Dave Gonzalez, who's my leader now, same mentality. Like they consider the entirety of the person. So I've been blessed with great leadership. Like
That's great.
it hasn't, I've been handled well
Yeah.
in regards to my upbringing and the people that have been in my life. And then in football and then outside of football, I'm like, man, this is great. Not everybody has that experience.
Yeah.
And I wish it were different for others, but this is my experience. And I would say I wouldn't change anything because I'm learning what I'm learning from really good people and
Well,
people that care about the entirety of the person and the team.
you
So
know what it,
I think that that's been beneficial for me.
you know what it sounds like, Cordell? It sounds like all the people that have surrounded you have considered who you are.
Mm,
Like you said before, hey, we don't consider each other enough. It sounds like all the people that have surrounded you were considerate of who you are as a person,
wow. Yeah.
right? And that's probably where you got it from, absorbed it, and are out there now teaching it.
Yes. I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, it has to be because you know the whole saying, we become the average of the people we hang around, right? And
Yes.
we become, if you want to be whoever that is, we'll do what they do and hang around those kind of people, and eventually you get sucked into it, which is where you want to be, which is and also goes the negative side if you get you hang with the wrong people, you end up in the wrong place. But when you look at pressure, do you deal with any pressures now? Anything that's kind of stands out as a professional, as a former athlete, as a dad, as a husband, what kind of pressures do you feel you deal with today?
There is pressure on every side. As a husband, as a father, I mean, I want to be my best.
Hmm.
And the reality is that I mean, there's a blessing in that we have 24 hours in every day. But that's also the greatest challenge that we all face is that we have 24 hours in a day. I feel like there's not enough time to be the best at every area of my life that I would and mean by the best, I mean up to the standards that I have. Like I want to exhaust myself at being the best that I can in my vocation, the best that I can at being a follower of Christ, the best that I can at being a father and a husband. And so all those and as a leader, like all those areas, I feel like, man, there's always something that I could do better. So the pressure is always there. Um, and even in success, there's still areas where I feel like I could find room to be more profitable. So I would say that like I would say I'm satisfied and unsatisfied at the same time because there's and there's challenges that I face like in the marketplace. Not everybody's happy with who I am or what I've done. You can't make everybody happy. My wife might not be excited about some things that I do or say. My children, they're not going to be excited when I tell
Yeah.
them no. There's
Right.
always the stress with children because
Sure.
all they want to hear is yes.
Yep.
And so all these areas are pulling on you constantly. And so I feel like the stress is there, but it also makes you better. If you're honest and if you embrace those challenges. But I I I would say that there's not one area in my life where stress doesn't exist, but also with that stress comes growth. And I think that, as you mentioned, me having the support that I have around me and the people that do consider me, right? Like, and that's every area of life, whether it's in my spiritual walk with my pastors and or whether it's in the marketplace, or even at home, my wife considering me. There's always help along the way, and we can kind of go back to the tape. We can go to
Yeah.
the drawing board and identify those stresses. But I would say mentally, physically, emotionally, there's always going to be those stresses. I would say that the best way that me personally, I have dealt with those things. So football was an outlet. So for a lot of testosterone, right? Like you can take out like all this testosterone and go and do something physical with it and bang against something, and it did something for me. Like meaning that was like I'm
Yeah.
like taking ownership
Yeah.
and going and embracing this role, and I'm banging heads with someone. So how do I go from banging heads with this 240-pound linebacker and feeling a real release from that? That was like part of me that now I don't have. So honestly, I think that too was a major stressor that I wasn't aware after football
Yeah.
that still existed. So physical fitness is is a stress in my life that I embrace because that prepares me for every other area. If
Yeah.
I can discipline my body to eat the right things and do the right things, then I can be disciplined in all these other areas when stress arises, because stress is inevitable with relationships. And I would really say relationally that that is the bulk of my stress.
Yeah.
But there's good stress and there's bad stress. And
Yeah.
as I mentioned before, frustration is my choice.
Yeah.
So I could choose to be frustrated about this, or I can take on the mindset of, how do we resolve this? How do we get better? But
Yep.
yeah, stress is on every side. I
Yep.
hope I answered that.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. And here's what I wrote down from what you said. And I know you're gathering all these things that are coming out of you from all the people that have surrounded you.
Yes.
Like we're all born with this clean slate, right? And it's those that influence us is where the knowledge comes in, and we choose what to accept,
Yes.
and we choose what to teach, right? But you said stress makes you better if you're honest, right? And
Yes.
then you said with stress comes growth. I mean, you should write that down. You should coin that. I don't know where you got it from, but don't tell anybody, and create your own pamphlet, right? And give it to people, especially
Yeah.
at work. I would put that on the wall at work. That was really that's a good one. I got a lot of good takeaways here. So Cordell, you and I, we've been talking now for an hour and a half. Long time. We're way over
Yes.
time. Is there anything I haven't asked you about? Anything we haven't touched on? Anything you think we should talk about before we wrap it up?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. No,
Not that I
no,
can
no
think of.
one, no last minute, hey, verbiage of quotes because you got so many of them.
Yeah, I got so many. I mean, I have a life that I feel has been rich because it
Yeah.
has been preserved by God.
Yep.
Um, if I could encourage anybody on one thing is like what I believe everybody is in search of two things, and that's purpose and that's peace. And if I can encourage anybody to and finding that purpose and that peace is finding it outside of yourself. And I could say it until I'm blue in the face as far as hey man, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. But he is my source of peace and he is my source of purpose, and he has given me that. And so I really challenge everybody, especially in this world where there's stress on every side for everyone. There's no one in this world right now without mental like anguish because of
Yeah.
everything that's going on, especially in America, right?
Yep.
So I would say I would encourage people to seek out the truth and you'll find it. Like if you search for the truth, because I had people come up to me and tell me about Jesus and why I should serve him before I actually encountered God. But everybody needs their personal experience.
Right.
Everybody is going to keep searching for purpose and peace. And I search for purpose and peace in the sport. I search for purpose and peace in women. I search for purpose and peace in all these other things in other areas where my social status, how do people perceive me? And all those areas failed me. And but God, he was faithful even to himself and even to his own word. So I would say my biggest motivator is search for the truth. Because if you really and genuinely search for the truth, you will find it. That's like it's part of going back to being honest with yourself. If you're honest about your shortcomings and you really want answers, I believe that you'll get them through our creator. So that's my greatest encouragement because I feel like we can all do things in our own strength, but at the end of the day, all of those things will fail us apart from being connected to our creator.
Seek out the truth and you'll find the peace.
Yes.
That is so cool. Well, Kordell, listen, man. Um, I know it's been a number of years since you and I have chatted, and it seems like now it's like yesterday. I was talking to you. Yeah, I mean, and you've grown into such a um, tremendous young man. It's so happy to see because I remember the challenges you were facing back then, and what you've overcome, and who you've become, and the people that you touch. It's just got to be incredible to be around you on a daily basis. And for those that are around you, they're lucky. They're lucky people.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
you know. And I am really fortunate to have you, to know you and have you on this show. And I can't wait to. I was going to say, child number 7, maybe.
I was planning on 7, but I spoke to my pastors about that because we're all, we have leaders and mentors, and they said, "Hey, chill out. You
Well, you
don't
gotta,
because think about having another child is a reset button."
yeah. Well, you got to ask the COO too.
Yes, and she was already shut down at 5. She's like, "Hey, no more." So the last one's a surprise,
All right, all right. So maybe the HR department was an influence.
Yes.
you know. But Kordell, listen, man, it's been great. I wish you and your family the best, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you so much, Jeff.